So today I'm going to show you how I edit a photo of two-time Ironman world champion Patrick Lange. I caught up with Patrick in 2019 in the Woodlands, Texas on one of his training days. My name is Scott Flathouse. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Let's get started. For this edit, we'll take a profile bike shot and make some basic edits in Lightroom. Then we'll export it to Photoshop for a sky replacement and some final touches. Let's get started. So I've got several photos here, and I've got one picked out that I'd like to use. And I've already applied some edits to these, so we're going to get it back to the straight out of the camera. So we'll take this one and we'll create a virtual copy. So we'll go up here to Photo, Create Virtual Copy. And where's the virtual copy? There it is. All right, and then we'll jump into the develop module and hit reset and reset everything back to straight out of the camera. All right, and then we'll make another virtual copy of this. You can also right click and create virtual copy. And that way we have a record of the original straight out of the camera, which in the end, when we get done with the edit, we'll show that as a comparison. All right, so the first thing that I do is check the horizon. I think on this shot, if I remember, he was going up a hill slightly, and so I've got the camera angled off, so let's go ahead and fix that. Not really very much of a straight horizon line to reference off of, so I'm just going to eyeball it, and we'll just, I think, probably maybe that looks about right. And so I haven't cut off the wheels at all, so I still have a little bit of I'm still showing the entire wheel, so that's good. And so yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And then taking a look at the light, it looks like the sun is back to the left and behind us a little bit, so his face is in shadow, and you can see the direction of the shadow of the bike is off to the right here. So let's see if we can bring that up some. So I'm going to take the shadow slider and lift it up, and when I do that, it tends to flatten things out some, so I'm going to drop the blacks back down a little bit. And that looks pretty good. Normally I drop the highlights down, which darkens the sky a little bit. But I think that looks pretty good right there. All right, and then we can use some of Lightroom's masking tools to make some further adjustments and get him to pop a little bit out of the background. So I'm going to select the subject, and we are going to take the whites, and let's bring the whites up a little bit. So we're going to brighten him a little bit by bringing the whites up. And again, I'm going to drop the blacks back, because really his bike and the bike tires, and those should be black, not gray, like if I just left the black slider alone. So we're going to drop the black back so we get some really nice contrast. There, so then we can turn that on and off and see what a difference that makes. That may be a little much. Okay. All right. The other thing I'd like to do is maybe add another mask, and this time we're going to select the background. So this is going to select everything except for Patrick. And I'm going to maybe drop the contrast a little bit. Darken it a little bit by dropping the highlights. I don't want to go too far here because then it looks unnatural. But I'm just trying to kind of flatten out, make the background, you know how things in the distance look kind of hazy and a little bit desaturated. That's another thing we can do, is desaturate the background just a little bit. So all I'm trying to do here is we want the emphasis on Patrick here. And even though we have some beautiful Texas countryside, I'm trying to de-emphasize that a little bit. Okay. All right. And now globally, maybe let me bring the shadows back up a little bit. Okay. Oh, and then let's go ahead and enable profile corrections. And I know that I'm going to crop it as a square, so I'm going to adjust the crop just to give me a little more room down here at the bottom. In fact, no, let's not do that. I'm gonna take this back to more of a full crop. We're gonna crop it in Photoshop, and I'll show you why when we get there. Okay, that's good enough. All right, so let's go to Photoshop. All right, so here we are in Photoshop. And since this bugs me, I'm going to go ahead and crop it. And should we crop it as a square? Yes, let's crop it as a square. That reason the background is yellow is because I've got my colors here selected, and the foreground and background is black and yellow. That looks pretty awful, but we're going to fix that. So and the way we're going to do that is with content aware fill. So I'm just going to select out this area here. And we got a little bit up top that we got to deal with too. And so what this is going to do is going to look around, and I really just want there to be pavement. And what it's doing is it's looking at the shadow, and it's doing its best to figure out what to fill in the selected area. And that's not bad. So before and after. It's not perfect. As we zoom in here, you can see it's kind of fuzzy, and it kind of had a hard time figuring out what pixels go in there. But we'll fix that. In fact, let's go ahead and do that. Let's pick the stamp tool. And I'm just going to go down here and start filling in with the stamp tool. Get a little too close to the bike, and And you'll notice that I created a second layer to do this. Sometimes that's easier to fix that second layer. As we go through in here and edit, I'll often add multiple layers on top of each other. That way if I mess up on one, then it's not as much of a correction. Alright, so I'm just going to go through here and use the clone stamp. Just kind of fill in this area. Okay, that's looking okay-ish. Okay. I don't know what this is, something in the road, but it's kind of distracting. Let's wipe it out too. All right. Okay. Let's hit save. And then the next thing we'll do is let's work on the sky. This is not a bad sky. It's got some clouds in here. We could do some stuff with it, but sometimes it's easier just to replace it all together. And Photoshop has a nice sky replacement tool that allows us to do that. So I wasn't planning on this one, but that actually doesn't look too bad, although it doesn't quite fit with the lighting conditions. Let's see if we can find a better one. So Photoshop has some default skies that they've got loaded up in there, but I've loaded a lot of my own sky photos. Let's do more of a daytime look. I think we're several hours past sunrise, so adding a sunrise or sunset type picture may not work really well. Single cloud, don't really like the composition. That's not bad. I like that. We'll try a couple of others here. Don't know what's going on there. So yeah, this is something you can do too, is as you go around and you see some interesting clouds. Here we go. I think we can scale this one up and yeah, maybe something like that. Oh, but I forgot to take care of that little piece up in the corner there. So now we got the look like he's riding along. Looks like there's some storms building up in the distance. And yeah, before we do that though, let me go back and fix this. So again, all I'm doing is selecting out the area and picking content aware fill, and Photoshop will highlight some areas around it where it wants to try to find the pixels to replace that selected area. And usually with skies it works really good. Yeah, so that took care of it. Could have clone stamped it out, a small enough area. All right, I'm gonna get rid of some of these other layers here, and now we're going to replace the sky. And increase the scale. I'll move it around till I get the composition that I like. Right about there. So again, in the original photo, we've got the sun off to the left and kind of behind us. And you can see the lighting on the cloud. The light is from the left and behind us as well. So that matches up pretty nicely. Fade the edge. Let's look at foreground lighting. How do we like that? I think that looks okay. Pull edge lighting all the way back. And we'll output it to new layers. Now, I can already tell that there are some problems. So the white areas in his jersey, when Photoshop creates these masks for the sky, they'll let the sky come through the jersey, and I'll show you what I mean here. Yeah, so what we have to do is go back and mask these out. And so I'll just work here on the mask, go to the brush tool, and we've got a hard brush I'm working with, and I'm just going to go through and all right, I'm working back and forth between my mouse and my Wacom tablet. There we go. Sometimes as we get close to the edge, it's easier to work with the mouse. So one technique I'm using is I'm holding down the shift key, and as I move the mouse and click, it draws a straight line between the points. And that's one way I kind of like to trace out the edge, because that way I can get a nice clean edge on these masks. I'll show you what I mean. So up here, click here, then hit the shift key, and click again, and Photoshop draws a straight line. The other way I could do this is with the pen tool and draw a selection with a pen tool and then fill it in. This just tends to go a little bit quicker. And then another trick is to change the blend mode of the brush to something like soft light. And what this does is anything that's gray, it will turn darker when I've got black selected, but it will tend to leave the white alone. So if I get sloppy and spill over, it won't completely ruin that mask. So it's just a little bit extra protection. Now you do have to go over it a little bit more just to get the lighter areas completely dark. But I don't want the sky showing through on any of this really. But the mask it makes is really good. You can see that along his facial hair and stuff, it's a really clean mask. To get in here a little tighter and work these areas. Okay. A couple more areas. So you can see that now that I have it on the soft light, it's really leaving that white space alone completely. I'll change the brush mode back to normal and we'll take care of that. All right. Okay, now let's see what we've done. Now the white parts of his jersey are truly white. And got a nice clean mask. Okay. Next we'll do some color correction. So let me go to my favorite way to correct color, the selective color tool. And we'll start at the top with the reds. And I always like to boost the saturation on the reds, and the way that we do that is we pull out cyan from the reds. That makes him look like he has a sunburn, so let's just give him a healthy tan by adding some yellow. And we can mask out the skin too, so that it doesn't affect the skin as much, but I think that looks pretty good. Let's go to the yellows, do the same thing. This is also going to affect the skin, but you can see it really affects the background as well. Kind of those grasses in the background. I'm not crazy about that. Let's leave the yellows alone for the most part. Maybe pull a little side. No, you make the grass look kind of nuclear green. just trying to desaturate the yellows just a little bit. Okay. Now the greens, we can saturate the greens by pulling out magenta, but I kind of like the greens generally to be somewhat desaturated, so we'll leave the greens. The cyans, so that's looks like it's mostly affecting the sky, maybe his kit some too. I think when we get to the blues, that's going to affect the blues. Let's desaturate the cyans a little bit. All right, here we go. Really crank up the blues. Blues are really kind of a dominant color in this image. We can, no, we'll leave all that alone. Magenta, same thing. I think there's no need to go crazy there. So all I've done was just pulled some yellow out, which saturates the blues. Okay. And then magentas, usually there's very little magenta in these images, and so not going to do much there. The other thing I like to do with selective color is on the whites is pull the blacks out of the whites, and what that does is really drives the highlights, and it's easy to get carried away and you lose a lot of the detail in the highlights by pulling too much, but I like to have about 2 or 3% just to boost the contrast a little bit. And same thing with the blacks. Of course, it's easy to go way too far on this, but I like to do maybe 2 or 3% on the blacks. That gives a little bit of a matte finish to it. And we'll do before and after. I think that's too much on the blacks. We'll go there. All right, and I think this is what I would consider to be a finished image. And so I might save it. And I've already cropped it to square, so it's ready to export and load up to Instagram. All right, well, thanks everybody for watching. And if you learned something or you like what you saw, then please like and subscribe and leave a comment. Let me know what you'd like to see. Thanks again.